the offering that we have is becoming increasingly compelling in terms of a broad-based integrated value proposition. On the one hand, we remain serious about cash flow, and we must be amongst the longest uninterrupted dividend-paying gold shares on the JSE. On the other hand, we offer the volatility, call it opportunity, of full exposure to the gold price. And now what's becoming increasingly prominent is also our performance in this regard in terms of ESG. If you look at where DRDGold is positioned at the moment, it's a zero waste enterprise. We don't dig holes, we fill holes. And the only waste that we produce is waste that's already on surface. So no new waste is produced. We take it from where it shouldn't be, where it's become a nuisance or a risk either in terms of the environment or in terms of society. We process it. Process that we use is very efficient, and it's a basis for a sustainable business. And then when it gets stored where it no longer poses that risk, or where it no longer poses that environmental nuisance. It's a contained facility that is managed towards the standards that are emerging and that are being established in terms of various governance bodies and interest groups across the globe when it comes to tailings management. So zero waste producing. Most of the water that we're using, and you'll see if you go through the letter to shareholders, most of the water that we're using is recycled water. We've again reduced the use of potable water by 5%. So it's a very, very small percentage of water. So grey water goes into the system. In the near term, we will be using more and more solar power and making use of battery storage, which will have a significant bring about a significant reduction in our carbon footprint. So here's a metals producer that creates no waste, uses recycled water, and increasingly is also going to be relying more and more and ultimately predominantly on solar power. So in terms of delivering into this broader ESG agenda, this could really be a textbook scenario. In terms of future viability, future sustainability, we know that there are a whole host of metals that are going to be required to do this transitioning into green power. We've said that we're aligning with Stillwater in that regard, and we are looking at opportunities in that regard. The world is 100% committed to doing this conversion to green power, but the world is as determined to oppose mining. The globe is not a mining-friendly environment. As a consequence, accessing resources are going to become increasingly hard. And the ones that are probably the most accessible are the ones that are already stockpiled in mine waste dumps across the globe. And that's really where our focus point is, where we want to take this model of grey water and green energy and produce those metals. So I think we're at the threshold of exciting times, which we do want to pursue in parallel with Stillwater. But it's a model that I think is a very good fit for where the world's mind is at this stage in terms of environmental impact. And also in terms of society, we are approaching those at 2, maybe 3 levels. On the one hand, we've made a very significant contribution and continue to make a very significant contribution into the fiscus by way of income tax. The money currently being spent by government in terms of social grants is probably one of the most important things that's happening in South Africa. The fact that we do have a very healthy social support system, and one of the main things standing between us and abject poverty as a nation. So on the one hand, we're putting money into the system that finds its way back into the communities where we operate, and on the other end, at the other end of that scale, almost I suppose another closed economy loop here, we are focusing a lot of our social investment efforts on the development of that informal economy. So the picture that you're seeing on the screen here, which is of a farm that's sort of taken the next step out of the little beds, the little trenches, into something slightly bigger and on its way to becoming a sustainable enterprise. Now, of that network, which is in excess of 4,000 families in and around the Johannesburg and now also Carletonville area, of that network, we are at the start, the threshold of initiating a program in collaboration with e-Enterprise, which is affiliated with the University of Pretoria. They've come up with 41 different programs, and there's quite a bit of information that will find its way onto our website in the near term, in the near future, aimed squarely at not just the quality of life aspect, but also on the development of the informal sector. We believe that the informal economy is the best and the surest way out of poverty. The formal economy, especially now with the Industrial Revolution and becoming so much harder to employ, formal economy is not going to be able to absorb the majority of employable individuals in South Africa and ultimately also the world. That trend is going to worsen. There will be more people unemployed at some point in the future than people that are employed. You'll have these large companies generating big revenues, paying income tax find its way into either social grant, which is what we call it, or universal income, which is what the international notion, this emerging notion is. And that informal economy, that's its source of capital, and that's where we're going to be busy over the next few years in assisting communities to become sustainable, slums to become villages, and for those economies to become increasingly sustainable. So very exciting programs, as I say, 41 different programs aimed at various levels of groups, etc., to try and develop those.